All right,
Episode 7,
here we are.
Real Life Lounge.
Real life lounge, real talk, real topics. Today we are talking about homeschooling.
Yeah. We're at episode 7 now, and I realize I have to take a look at what shirt I'm wearing so that I'm not repeating ones that I've already worn.
I'm sure people won't notice.
Yeah. But it's those are the things I think about sometimes. So we're talking about homeschooling today. So we're a homeschool family.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know our journey, we're not going to go into too much detail about our journey, but we didn't homeschool prior to the pandemic. I actually remember other people saying like, "Oh, we homeschool." I'm like, "That's great, good for you." Never. No way. There's no way I could do it.
Yeah.
So today we just thought we'd kind of talk about some of the things to think about, more of our journey, maybe a little bit of our journey. And then this month we thought we would dive into some common myths, like things that we previously believed and have found not to be true. So
yeah. And I think it's important to say, like, there's no right, there's no wrong, there's no good, there's no bad, right? It's like what's right for your family. And we've found that homeschooling works for our family. And we also at the same time recognize that it doesn't work for every family and it doesn't have to, right? So there's a lot of choices on. I do think that as we've evolved in our society, that homeschooling has gained a little bit more acceptance. And as opposed to 30 years ago, 60 years ago, when I was in school and my parents were in school.
I thought you were going to say you were in school 60 years ago.
No, I was thinking like I was in school 30 years ago. My parents were in school 60 years ago. The access to resources was so much different, which makes homeschooling so much easier today because of that access. So homeschooling is looking at changing the environment in which we learn and how we access learning material. So because that is more at our fingertips now, homeschooling becomes a little bit easier endeavor than I'm sure it was 30 years ago. There weren't a lot of kids homeschooling then, and now it's becoming a little bit more commonplace.
And I think that's where a lot of the stigma comes in, right? Because when we think of, when our parents think of what homeschooling was like when they were parents and we were school age, and then when we think of when we were school age, there was a lot more stigma, I feel like, around homeschooling. They were kind of like the weird kids, they weren't social, which we'll get into all of that stuff. But I feel like especially in the last 3 years, between the accessibility of online learning and resources and all the things you can find on the internet, plus the pandemic creating the shift where a lot of people like us would have never homeschooled previously, started homeschooling. We're like, whoa, this is actually really awesome. And so now there's all these like co-ops and so many great resources for families and kids that didn't exist even 3 years ago, much less 30 and 60 years ago.
Yeah. And if you think about how we learn as adults, we really just need to be resourceful, right? Like something as simple as like, oh, I needed to take my toilet off so that we could.
I was totally thinking toilet in my head. I'm like, I hope he says toilet. I'm gonna talk about the toilet.
So that we could retile the floor and then put the toilet back on, but we didn't know how to take a toilet off and put it back on. But like any of you at home, what would you do? YouTube it. You figured it out, right?
GTS.
Google that stuff. Yeah. So that's how we learn. So homeschooling is kind of like one of the myths that maybe we'll come up with is that like we're not qualified as the teacher, right? We don't know the math all the way to where our kids want to go with math. We don't know all the things to be qualified teachers in those. But we always kind of come back to is like we're trying to accomplish two things with our kids. One is to create an urge of curiosity, and another is to teach resourcefulness. So if someone is curious enough to want to learn and then is resourceful enough to go find answers, boom, you've got learning. And that's really what we do as adults. If you think about and our society moves so quickly that you always have to be learning new things. So that's like a lifelong skill to have. So that's kind of where that's kind of where homeschooling is for us.
Maggie and I had that exact conversation in the car. We kind of said there's two, if we can instill two things in our kids through homeschooling, it will feel like, I don't know, success isn't the right word, but there's just two things we're passionate about teaching our kids. And one is thinking and learning. So it's the enjoyment from learning and being resourceful. So we kind of lump that into one. And then the other one is being able to communicate and relate to other people. So if you can think and you can relate, you can do anything.
Yeah. Yeah. So that relating piece brings up one of the myths or maybe misperceptions or concerns that people have about homeschooling, which is, how are you going to socialize your kids?
Are we going down that?
Well, did you want to? I thought we were.
No.
Huh.
I think we should wrap it up because we're at like 6 minutes. But what I was going to add in closing is that we realize that homeschooling isn't for everyone, and that there's a lot of families that just practically can't do that. Like if both parents or you're a single parent are working full time, like we get that it's not possible. And so like Brian said, we're not in any way trying to say that any choice is better than not. But if you're having that like tug or curiosity, or you're watching our two families or some other family and you're like, can I do this? Should I do this? But I have these concerns. We hope that this month will kind of put that stuff at ease so that you feel like you can take that leap and potentially try it out, because it won't always be easy. The first year in particular, when we were like just thrown into it and figuring stuff out, was really, really hard. And Brian was working out of the home at that point, so it was mostly on my own. And there were some very tough moments, but now that I had some other expletives in my head, but now that we're like 3 years into it, it's so magical. And when we think about all the opportunities and things we get to do with them, it's very exciting. So
yeah. And I think having jumped into it, what we now see are all the benefits, at least for our family, of homeschooling. And it makes us super excited for the future, knowing that we've created this environment that gives us a little more hands-on our kids' education, but also like how we live our lives and how we think about our lives day to day, and how we're able to instill that into our kids by being with them. So there's been like so many benefits that we've seen that makes us really excited for the future.
Yeah. So if you're thinking about homeschooling, or you have a sibling or a friend who's homeschooling, you're like, oh, I could never homeschool because of this, we would love to know what you think are the like myths or the reasons why homeschooling is not possible, tough, not good, whatever that may be, because we'd love to talk about them. I mean, so far we for sure are going to talk about the socialization myth. We'll talk about patience that you need. I think Matt and Maggie are doing that one. And then we can definitely talk about feeling qualified, having the education to actually teach your kids. So if there's any other myths or questions you have about homeschooling, we'd love to talk through them over this next month.
Yeah.
So thanks again for being here. Please share, like, subscribe, save these real life lounges. And as always, we're open to your feedback and ideas for topics. Have a great day.
Bye. Thanks.